The bell rang loudly through the halls of Crestwood High, echoing off the walls like a reminder of battles yet to come. For most students, the first day back after summer was exciting: new clothes, new gossip, and the promise of fresh opportunities. But for Isabella Grant, it was another reminder of her place in the school's hierarchy, invisible to most, a target to some. Isabella tugged at the hem of her sweater, trying to cover herself as she shuffled through the crowd. She wasn't the kind of girl who turned heads for the right reasons. Her figure was fuller than most of her classmates, her hair usually tied back in a messy bun, and her round glasses often slipping down her nose. She carried her books close to her chest like armor, hoping they could protect her from the stares she imagined trailing after her. She wasn't without kindness in her life. At home, her grandmother Evelyn was her safe place, a woman of wisdom and warmth who reminded her every day that she was special, even if the world failed to see it. But within the walls of Crestwood High, Isabella felt small. And small was dangerous. As Isabella made her way into homeroom, the chatter of students filled the air like static. She took her usual seat at the back, sliding into the chair quietly. A group of girls near the front burst into laughter, and she instinctively ducked her head, praying they weren't laughing at her. Unfortunately, they often were. Chloe Reed, the queen bee of Crestwood, was already perched at her desk like she owned the place. Her glossy blonde hair cascaded over her shoulders, and her designer bag rested casually at her feet. Chloe was the kind of girl people either wanted to be or wanted to be with. And she knew it. Her best friend, and constant shadow, was Liam Carter. Handsome in a careless way, with a crooked smile and a talent for soccer, Liam had a reputation for being charming. But his charm often turned cruel when paired with Chloe's venom. Together, they ruled the social food chain, and they had decided long ago that Isabella was easy prey. When the teacher stepped out of the room for a moment, Chloe leaned back in her chair, her eyes zeroing in on Isabella. A smirk played at her lips. "Well, look who survived the summer," Chloe said loudly enough for half the class to hear. "I'm honestly shocked. I figured she'd eat herself into oblivion by now." Laughter rippled through the room. Isabella's face burned as she stared at her desk, wishing she could sink into it and disappear. Liam chimed in, grinning. "Careful, Chloe. If we laugh too hard, she might think we're calling her a pig. And we wouldn't want to insult pigs, would we?" The room erupted again, and Chloe tossed her hair back, satisfied with her performance. Isabella swallowed hard, biting back the sting of tears. She had learned long ago that crying only fueled them. Still, her throat ached, and the laughter echoed in her ears long after it had died down. At lunch, Isabella sat alone at her usual table in the corner of the cafeteria. She unwrapped the sandwich her grandmother had lovingly packed, her hands trembling slightly. She tried to focus on the food, to block out the noise of the room, but Chloe's voice carried easily across the space. "Hey, Liam," Chloe called, her voice dripping with amusement. "Watch this." Before Isabella could react, Liam strutted over to her table. He plucked the sandwich out of her hands and raised it above his head like a trophy. "Looks good," he said mockingly. "But I don't think you need it." Chloe and her friends burst into laughter as Liam dropped the sandwich onto the floor. The cafeteria roared with cruel amusement, the sound a tidal wave crashing over Isabella. Her stomach twisted, not from hunger, but from humiliation. She quickly gathered her things and fled the cafeteria, ignoring the jeers that followed her out the door. The bathroom stall became her refuge. She locked herself inside, her back pressed against the cold metal door as tears streamed down her cheeks. Her body shook with silent sobs, and for a moment, she wished she could disappear forever. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. With trembling hands, she pulled it out and saw a text from her grandmother. "Don't forget, sweetheart, your worth is not in their words. You are strong, even when you don't feel it. Love you." Isabella clutched the phone to her chest, letting the message wash over her. Evelyn always seemed to know when she needed a reminder. Still, as much as her grandmother's words soothed her, they didn't erase the pain. The sting of Chloe's laughter, Liam's sneer, the cafeteria's cruel roar, they lingered like scars etched into her skin. That evening, Isabella sat at the kitchen table, poking at her dinner. Evelyn watched her carefully, her sharp eyes softened by concern. "Rough day?" she asked gently. Isabella shrugged, trying to hide the tears threatening to spill. "Just school stuff." Evelyn reached across the table, resting her hand on Isabella's. "Isabella, listen to me. People will always find reasons to tear others down. Sometimes it's jealousy, sometimes it's cruelty, and sometimes it's just ignorance. But their words don't define you." Isabella blinked back tears, her voice small. "Then why does it hurt so much?" "Because you have a heart, my dear," Evelyn said softly. "And people with hearts always feel the deepest. But don't let them decide your worth. One day, they'll learn their lesson. And when they do, you'll be standing tall." Isabella nodded, though the weight of her grandmother's words felt heavy. She wanted to believe them. She wanted to believe that the pain would one day matter less. But in that moment, all she could feel was the ache of being unwanted, unseen, and unworthy. Still, a seed had been planted, a seed that would grow in the quiet corners of her heart. The next morning, as Isabella walked through the crowded halls of Crestwood, she kept her head down, but her grandmother's words echoed faintly in her mind. "One day, they'll learn their lesson. And when they do, you'll be standing tall." She didn't feel tall yet. But maybe, someday. Before we continue this story, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell to enjoy more amazing stories. The week dragged on like an endless punishment. Every morning Isabella woke with a pit in her stomach, dreading the moment she knew would come. School was supposed to be a place of learning, of growth. For her, it had become a battlefield, one she fought silently, without allies, while the enemy laughed in her face. It wasn't just Chloe and Liam. They had turned Isabella into the punchline of Crestwood High. A look, a whisper, a laugh, everywhere she went, it followed her like a shadow she couldn't shake. Students who didn't even know her name pointed and giggled when she passed. They didn't need to know her. Chloe and Liam's approval was enough to turn cruelty into a sport. Friday morning began like any other. Isabella slipped into her homeroom, sliding into the back seat, praying to go unnoticed. But Chloe had sharp eyes, like a hawk scanning the field for its prey. "Grant," Chloe called out sweetly. Her voice carried through the room, silencing the chatter. "What's the weather like down there in the back? Or can't you tell with all the—" She gestured to Isabella's body with a cruel smile. "Extra insulation?" Laughter erupted again, the sound stabbing Isabella's chest. She ducked her head, clutching her books tighter, wishing they could shield her. Liam joined in. "Careful, Chloe. If she sneezes too hard, she might cause an earthquake." The room roared, and Isabella's heart sank deeper into her chest. She pressed her lips together, refusing to give them tears. They wanted a reaction. She wouldn't give them one. But inside, she was breaking. That afternoon in gym class, the cruelty took another step. The students were lined up in teams for relay races, excitement buzzing in the air. Isabella stood awkwardly near the back, already dreading what was to come. Sports weren't her strong suit, and she knew the humiliation of being picked last was only moments away. "All right, team captains," the coach called. "Choose your players." Chloe was, of course, one of the captains. With a flick of her perfect hair, she started calling names, her friends, the athletes, the kids everyone wanted. Liam was the other captain, and his choices were nearly identical. One by one, students were picked until Isabella stood alone. Chloe smirked. "Do we have to?" she asked loudly, glancing at the coach. "Can't we just play fair?" Snickers spread across the gym. Isabella felt the familiar sting of rejection settle in her chest. "Rules are rules," the coach said firmly. "She's on your team." Chloe groaned dramatically. "Fine. But don't blame me when we lose." The words were like knives. Isabella stepped forward, cheeks burning, wishing the ground would swallow her whole. When the race began, Isabella tried her best. She ran slower than the others, her breath coming heavy, but she pushed herself anyway. She needed, to prove she wasn't the worthless lump they painted her to be. But as she reached for the baton, her sweaty hand slipped, and it clattered to the floor. Gasps echoed. Chloe rolled her eyes, her voice sharp enough to slice through the air. Seriously? Can't you do anything right? The laughter that followed was merciless. Isabella scrambled to grab the baton, tears blurring her vision, and stumbled to the finish line long after everyone else had crossed. Her team groaned in unison, glaring at her like she had ruined their lives. Chloe made a show of patting her on the shoulder. Don't worry, Grant. Maybe running isn't your thing. Maybe just stick to eating. You're good at that. Even the coach didn't intervene this time. Isabella's heart sank. If even the adults ignored it, what chance did she have? That night, Isabella sat on her bed, her textbook spread open but unread. Her mind replayed every laugh, every whisper, every cruel word. She thought of Chloe's smirk, Liam's jokes, the cafeteria's roar. The weight of it pressed on her chest until she could hardly breathe. She grabbed her journal, a simple leather-bound book her grandmother had given her, and flipped to a blank page. The words poured out, jagged and raw. They hate me. Maybe I deserve it. Maybe I am everything they say I am. Fat. Useless. Worthless. Her pen hovered, her eyes blurring with tears. She wanted to rip the page out, but instead, she forced herself to keep writing. But I don't want to believe that. I don't want their words to be the truth. I don't want to feel this way forever. When she finally set the pen down, she felt a strange calm wash over her. The pain wasn't gone, but somehow, putting it into words made it more bearable. The next morning, Evelyn found Isabella staring blankly at her cereal bowl. You hardly touched your food, Evelyn said gently. I'm not hungry, Isabella muttered. Evelyn tilted her head, studying her granddaughter. This isn't just about food, is it? Isabella shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. They won't stop, Grandma. Every day, it's something new. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of being me. Evelyn's eyes softened, and she reached across the table, holding Isabella's hand tightly. Oh, my sweet girl. Don't you ever say that again. You are more than the names they call you. More than the laughter. More than the pain. You have a strength they'll never understand. But I don't feel strong, Isabella whispered. Strength isn't about what you feel in the moment, Evelyn said firmly. It's about what you choose to do. You can let their cruelty bury you, or you can let it shape you into someone they'll never forget. Isabella sniffled, her chest tightening. She wanted to believe her grandmother, but the wounds were too fresh, the voices too loud. Still, Evelyn's words planted another seed. Perhaps, deep down, she wanted to prove them wrong, not for Chloe and Liam, but for herself. The following Monday, Isabella walked into school with her journal tucked firmly into her bag. It was her secret weapon now, a place where she could turn their cruelty into ink instead of scars. She wasn't sure how yet, but she knew she needed something, anything, to fight back. And though the whispers still followed her, though Chloe's smirk still cut like glass and Liam's laughter still stung, Isabella carried a small spark inside her. It wasn't strength yet. Not confidence. Not revenge. But it was something. And sometimes, something is the beginning of everything. The first month of school dragged by like a storm that refused to end. For Isabella Grant, each day blurred into the next, a series of sharp laughs, whispered insults, and cruel games played at her expense. She had grown used to keeping her head down, moving quickly, and finding quiet places where she could hide. But Chloe Reed wasn't satisfied with whispers anymore. Neither was Liam Carter. They wanted more than quiet humiliation. They wanted spectacle. It began in the cafeteria on a Wednesday afternoon. Isabella had been sitting at her corner table, her journal open beside her untouched tray. Writing had become her only comfort. When she poured her feelings into the pages, the words lost their power to control her. She didn't notice Chloe and Liam approaching until it was too late. Well, Chloe drawled, sliding into the seat across from her. Look at this. Our little novelist. Before Isabella could move, Liam snatched the journal from the table. Hey, give that back. Isabella lunged forward, panic flooding her chest. Liam flipped the book open, his eyes scanning the words. His grin widened. Oh, this is good. Listen, Chloe, they hate me. Maybe I deserve it. Maybe I am everything they say I am. Isabella's stomach dropped. He was reading her private thoughts, her pain, her secrets, aloud to the cafeteria. Chloe leaned closer, smirking. A diary? That's adorable. Poor Isabella. Writing about how sad her life is. No wonder she eats alone. Liam climbed onto a nearby bench, raising the journal high. His voice carried across the room. Listen up, everyone. Our little friend Isabella has been writing poetry about how much she hates herself. Laughter erupted. Students craned their necks, some standing on chairs to hear better. Isabella's vision blurred with tears as Liam continued reading, his voice mocking every word she had written. The humiliation burned hotter than any insult before. These weren't just jokes anymore. These were her thoughts, her fears, her heart, laid bare for the entire school to mock. Stop it, she cried, her voice cracking. She reached for the journal, but Chloe shoved her back into her seat with a cruel smile. Face it, Isabella, Chloe said sweetly. This is who you are. A pathetic, fat little girl who will never be anything more. The laughter grew louder, echoing off the walls. Isabella grabbed her bag and fled, the sound chasing her down the hall. She burst into the nearest bathroom and locked herself in a stall, pressing her back against the door as sobs tore through her chest. Her journal. Her one safe place. Violated. She stayed there until the final bell rang. When she finally made her way home, her grandmother Evelyn was waiting, concern etched into her features. Isabella, what happened? Evelyn asked gently as she took one look at her tear-streaked face. They read it, Isabella choked out, her voice barely a whisper. My journal. They read it in front of everyone. Evelyn's eyes softened with sorrow. She pulled her granddaughter into a tight embrace, letting Isabella sob against her shoulder. Oh, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. I can't do this anymore, Grandma, Isabella whispered. I can't keep going back there. It's too much. Evelyn pulled back, cupping Isabella's face in her hands. Listen to me, my dear. They can laugh at your words, but they don't understand them. They don't understand you. And one day, you'll show them who you really are. You'll show them a strength they can't even imagine. Isabella shook her head, her voice broken. But what if I never do? Then you keep trying, Evelyn said firmly. Because you're stronger than you know. And the only person who gets to decide your worth is you. The next day, Isabella kept her head lower than ever. She avoided eye contact, skipped lunch, and prayed for invisibility. But invisibility wasn't an option anymore. Chloe and Liam had made sure of that. As Isabella walked down the hallway, she heard the whispers. Did you hear what she wrote? She actually thinks she's worthless. No wonder nobody likes her. The words wrapped around her like chains, pulling her deeper into despair. She reached her locker, fumbling with the combination, when she noticed something taped to the door. A crude drawing, her body exaggerated to monstrous proportions, with the word whale scrawled across the top. Her chest tightened. She ripped the paper down and crumpled it in her fist, but the laughter nearby told her Chloe and Liam were watching. Chloe smirked, leaning against the locker, while Liam chuckled under his breath. Don't be mad, Chloe said innocently. We're just having fun. Yeah, Liam added. Besides, if you can't laugh at yourself, who can you laugh at? The hallway filled with laughter again, and Isabella felt the walls closing in. That night, she sat in her room, staring at the blank pages of a new journal. Her old one was ruined, stained with humiliation and fear. But something inside her refused to let the bullies win completely. She picked up her pen and began to write, her words shaky but determined. They can laugh. They can call me names. They can humiliate me. But they can't take my voice. They can't take my dreams. They can't decide who I am. The words surprised her. They weren't about pain this time. They were about defiance. About survival. When she closed the journal, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in weeks: control. The following morning, Isabella walked into Crestwood with her shoulders a little straighter. Chloe and Liam were waiting, as they always were, ready with smirks and whispers. But this time, when Chloe sneered, "Morning, whale," Isabella met her gaze for the first time. For a moment, Chloe faltered. It wasn't a victory. Not yet. But it was the first spark of resistance. And sparks, when fanned, could grow into flames. The humiliation from the journal incident lingered like smoke after a fire. Everywhere Isabella went, whispers followed. She had become the school's favorite story, a living punchline. The bullies had crossed the line, but instead of it breaking her completely, something inside Isabella began to harden. Still, Crestwood High wasn't done with her yet. It happened during Spirit Week, the time of year when the entire school buzzed with excitement. Hallways were decorated with banners, students dressed in themed outfits, and the gym buzzed with anticipation for the annual pep rally. For most, it was a highlight. For Isabella, it was just another stage for her tormentors. She tried to keep to the edges of the crowd, blending into the bleachers, but Chloe and Liam always had a way of sniffing her out. "Isabella." Chloe's sing-song voice carried across the gym. "Come down here. We've got something special for you." Isabella froze, her stomach twisting. She shook her head, clutching her books tighter. But Liam was already climbing the bleachers, his grin wide and mischievous. "Come on, don't be shy," he said, grabbing her arm and tugging her toward the center of the gym. Students' eyes followed them, curiosity sparking. "What are you doing?" "Let go," Isabella hissed, but Liam was stronger, and Chloe was already waiting in the middle of the floor. Chloe held a microphone, her smile dazzling under the gym lights. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, her voice amplified, "today we're introducing a new Crestwood tradition. Our very own mascot, Isabella the Whale." The crowd roared with laughter. Before Isabella could escape, Chloe and Liam pulled out a crude, oversized costume they had prepared, a cheap, inflatable whale suit. Gasps and giggles erupted as they tried to force it into her hands. "Put it on," Liam jeered. "Come on, show some school spirit." "No," Isabella whispered, shaking her head, tears already burning her eyes. The crowd chanted louder. "Whale! Whale! Whale!" Her body trembled, her heart pounding in her ears. Every eye in the gym was on her. She wanted to scream, to run, to disappear, but her legs wouldn't move. She was frozen in place, drowning in the laughter that surrounded her. Finally, the coach intervened, storming across the gym floor. "That's enough. Everyone back to your seats." The crowd quieted reluctantly, but the damage was done. Isabella bolted for the exit, her face streaked with tears, the laughter echoing in her mind long after she left the building. She didn't stop running until she reached the park down the street. She collapsed onto a bench, gasping for breath, her chest heaving with sobs. "How could they do this?" she whispered to herself. "Why me? What did I ever do to deserve this?" Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Evelyn. "Thinking of you, sweetheart. Remember, storms don't last forever. You are stronger than you think." Isabella stared at the screen, her tears falling harder. "Stronger than I think," she repeated, the words bitter on her tongue. She didn't feel strong. She felt broken. That night, she skipped dinner. She stayed in her room, curled up under her blanket, staring at the ceiling. She thought about the laughter, the chants, the whale costume. She thought about how her journal, the only safe place she had been stolen and mocked. For the first time, a terrifying thought crept into her mind: maybe the world would be better without me. The idea scared her. She shook her head violently, tears streaming down her cheeks. Evelyn's words echoed faintly in her mind, storms don't last forever. But how long could she weather this one? The next morning, Isabella barely had the strength to get out of bed. Her grandmother noticed immediately. Evelyn sat beside her, brushing a gentle hand over Isabella's hair. "My darling," she said softly, "I can see how much you're hurting. But promise me something, you will never let their cruelty decide whether you stay in this world. They don't deserve that kind of power over you." Isabella's lips trembled. "But I'm so tired, Grandma. I don't know how much longer I can keep going." Evelyn cupped her face, her eyes glistening. "You keep going for yourself. For the life you deserve, not the life they try to trap you in. You are not their victim. You are a survivor. And one day, you will be more than that, you will be a warrior. I promise you." Isabella broke down, clinging to her grandmother's embrace. For the first time in weeks, she let someone see her pain fully. And in Evelyn's arms, she felt the faintest flicker of hope. That night, Isabella opened her journal again. She stared at the blank page, then began to write. "They humiliated me again. They wanted to break me. And maybe for a moment, they did. But I'm still here. I'm still breathing. And as long as I'm here, I have a chance. Maybe Grandma's right. Maybe one day I'll be more than this." The words weren't strong, not yet. But they were honest. And honesty was a kind of strength. The following week, Isabella noticed something small but strange. A freshman girl she barely knew, Emily, slipped a folded note into her locker. Curious, Isabella opened it. Inside, in shaky handwriting, were the words, "I'm sorry they're so mean to you. I think you're really brave." Isabella's eyes filled with tears. For the first time, she realized she wasn't completely alone. Maybe the whole school laughed. But at least one person saw her differently. And maybe, just maybe, others would too. It was a tiny light in the darkness, but light, no matter how small, could chase away shadows. That night, Isabella stood at her window, staring out at the stars. She thought about Chloe and Liam, about the way they thrived on cruelty. She thought about Evelyn's words, about Emily's note, about her journal entries that were slowly turning from despair into resilience. And for the first time, she whispered to herself, "This isn't the end of me. This is the beginning." The weeks after the pep rally were quiet, too quiet. Isabella felt the sting of humiliation long after the chants of Wail had faded from the gym. Every time she walked down the hall, she imagined eyes following her, whispers biting at her back. But something inside her had shifted. It wasn't a sudden burst of confidence or a magic cure for her pain. It was subtle, like a fire smoldering under ash. She had survived the worst moment of her life. And if she had survived that, maybe she could survive the next one too. It started with her grandmother's gentle push. "Come take a walk with me," Evelyn suggested one crisp Saturday morning. The autumn air was sharp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves. Isabella dragged her feet, her sweater pulled tightly around her. "Do I have to?" Evelyn smiled knowingly. "Sometimes moving your body helps heal the soul. Humor me." They strolled through the park, Evelyn's steps slow but steady. At first, Isabella hated it, the way her legs ached, the burn in her chest. But after a few minutes, something surprising happened. She began to feel lighter, freer. The rhythm of her feet, the cool air filling her lungs, it was different than running in gym class, where laughter trailed her every move. Here, no one was watching. No one was mocking. She could just be. "See?" Evelyn said softly, noticing the hint of ease in Isabella's shoulders. "Strength comes in many forms. This is one of them." Encouraged, Isabella began walking every morning before school. At first, it was just a block or two. Then it was longer. Soon, she started jogging, just a little, just enough to feel the thrill of accomplishment. She didn't tell anyone. It wasn't about proving herself to Chloe or Liam. It was about proving something to herself. At school, things hadn't magically improved. Chloe and Liam still sneered, still found opportunities to remind her of her place. But Isabella had learned to meet their gaze now. Not always. Not every time. But often enough to make Chloe raise an eyebrow. "What are you looking at?" Chloe snapped one morning when Isabella didn't look away. "Nothing," Isabella replied calmly, and walked past. It was small. Insignificant to anyone else. But to Isabella, it felt like a victory. Her journal became her secret weapon. The pages filled not with words of despair, but with observations, plans, even small affirmations. "I walked half a mile today. I didn't cry when Chloe mocked me. Maybe I'm stronger than I think." Each sentence was a brick, building the foundation of something new. One afternoon in art class, Isabella's teacher announced a school-wide competition. Students were invited to create a piece, painting, drawing, sculpture, that expressed who they were. Most of the class groaned, but Isabella's heart stirred. Art had always been her quiet refuge. She loved losing herself in colors and lines, creating worlds no one could destroy. When Chloe overheard her signing up, she snorted. "This should be good. What's she going to draw? A buffet table?" Liam chuckled, tossing a pencil between his fingers. "Maybe she'll just paint herself as the school mascot. Save us all the suspense." The class laughed, but Isabella stayed silent. For once, their words didn't cut as deep. She had an idea forming in her mind, an idea they would never understand until it was too late. At home, she threw herself into the project. She worked late into the night, sketching, painting, pouring her heart into every brushstroke. The canvas came alive with her story, not just her pain, but her resilience. She painted a girl standing in the shadows while voices surrounded her like chains. But from her chest, a burst of light broke through, scattering the darkness. It was raw. It was vulnerable. And it was hers. When the day of the art showcase arrived, Isabella's stomach churned with nerves. The gymnasium was filled with displays from dozens of students, abstract paintings, clay sculptures, digital collages. Parents and teachers milled about, admiring the work. Chloe and Liam strutted through the room, mocking pieces as they passed. When they reached Isabella's painting, Chloe smirked. "Wow. Dramatic much? Looks like somebody's crying for attention." But Isabella didn't look at them. Instead, she watched as other students paused in front of her work. They didn't laugh. They didn't sneer. They studied it, some with furrowed brows, some with quiet nods of respect. A teacher murmured, "This is powerful." For the first time, Isabella felt seen. Not as the joke of the school. Not as the whale. But as an artist. As someone who had a voice. When the results were announced, Isabella didn't win first place. But she didn't care. She won third, and the applause that followed felt like a victory louder than any cheerleading chant Chloe could muster. As she stepped forward to accept her ribbon, she caught sight of Emily, the freshman who had once slipped her a note. Emily's smile was wide, her eyes shining with pride. And in that moment, Isabella realized something: she wasn't completely alone anymore. Later that night, she wrote in her journal, "They wanted me to be a joke. But today, I was more. Today, I was seen. And if I can be seen once, I can be seen again. Maybe even heard. This isn't the end. This is the beginning of my story." She closed the journal, her chest rising with something unfamiliar but undeniable. Hope. After the art showcase, things didn't change overnight. Chloe and Liam didn't suddenly leave her alone. The whispers didn't disappear completely. But Isabella noticed something: when people talked about her now, it wasn't always with cruelty. Some mentioned her painting. Others nodded at her in the halls. A few even offered quiet compliments. It wasn't much, but it was enough to remind her that she wasn't invisible. And she wasn't just the whale. She was Isabella Grant. The change rattled Chloe. She had expected Isabella to crumble forever, to stay the easy target that gave her power. But Isabella's calm defiance, the way she walked past Chloe without shrinking, the way she looked teachers in the eye, made Chloe uneasy. "Don't you notice it?" Chloe muttered to Liam one afternoon as they lingered near the lockers. "She's different." Liam shrugged, spinning his basketball lazily on one finger. "She's still pathetic. One art ribbon doesn't change anything." But Chloe frowned. She hated when things slipped out of her control, and lately, Isabella's steady presence felt like a crack forming in her carefully built image. Isabella, meanwhile, continued her quiet transformation. She kept walking in the mornings, pushing herself farther each week. She discovered that she loved music during her walks, songs that made her feel unstoppable, even if she still fought tears sometimes. At home, Evelyn cheered her on with every small step. "See? You're not just surviving anymore, my darling. You're living." The words settled in Isabella's heart like a promise. In English class, another opportunity arose. Mr. Hall, their teacher, announced a speech assignment. Each student was to prepare a short presentation on something meaningful to them. When Isabella's turn came, she felt her stomach knot. She had always hated speaking in front of others, the stares, the whispers, the stifled laughs. Chloe and Liam were already smirking in the back row, waiting for her to stumble. She clutched her note cards, her palms sweaty. But then she remembered Evelyn's words. Strength comes in many forms. Taking a deep breath, she stepped to the front. "My speech is about courage," she began, her voice trembling. "Not the kind you read about in books, where heroes slay dragons or save the world. I'm talking about the kind of courage it takes to wake up every day when you know the world doesn't want you to exist as you are." The room grew still. "It's the courage to walk into a school where people laugh at you for how you look, or what you wear. The courage to keep going even when your heart feels too heavy to carry. And the courage to believe, even when you don't feel it, that you are worth something." Her voice cracked, but she pressed on. "Courage isn't about being fearless. It's about facing fear and deciding to keep standing anyway." When she finished, silence filled the room. For a moment, she thought everyone was waiting to laugh. But then, slowly, a few students clapped. Then more. Soon the room filled with applause. Chloe's smirk faltered. Liam rolled his eyes, but Isabella didn't care. She had spoken her truth, and people had listened. After class, Emily rushed to her side. "That was amazing," she said breathlessly. "You're so brave, Isabella." The words warmed Isabella's heart more than any applause. She had been brave. And bravery felt good. But the cracks in Chloe's confidence widened. That evening, she vented to Liam. "She's not supposed to be brave. She's supposed to be pathetic. Why is everyone acting like she's inspiring now? Because she talks pretty?" Liam scoffed. "Relax. Nobody cares for real." But Chloe cared. Because for the first time, she felt something she had never felt before when looking at Isabella Grant. Threatened. The shift became clearer in the weeks that followed. Teachers called on Isabella more often, praising her thoughtful answers. Other students began sitting with her in the cafeteria, Emily, of course, but also a few others who had once stayed silent during Chloe's taunts. Chloe noticed. And she hated it. One afternoon, as Isabella walked down the hall with Emily, Chloe blocked her path. "Don't think a little ribbon and a sob story make you important," Chloe sneered. "You're still nothing." But this time, Isabella didn't shrink. She met Chloe's eyes steadily. "If I'm nothing," she said calmly, "why do you waste so much energy trying to convince me?" The hallway went silent. Emily's jaw dropped. A few students nearby stifled laughs, not at Isabella, but at Chloe. Chloe's cheeks flushed with anger. She shoved past Isabella, muttering under her breath. But Isabella didn't care. For the first time, she had stood up for herself publicly. And she hadn't fallen apart. That night, Isabella wrote in her journal again. "I don't know when it happened. But today, I felt strong. Not just surviving. Not just enduring. Strong. And I think Chloe felt it too. Maybe she's not as powerful as she thinks. Maybe none of them are. She closed the journal, smiling faintly. The smoldering fire inside her was no longer hidden, it was beginning to burn brighter. Meanwhile, Chloe sat in her room, staring at her reflection. For years, she had been the queen of Crestwood High. People laughed at her jokes, followed her lead, feared her scorn. But lately, something was changing. When Isabella had looked her in the eye, Chloe had felt something she never expected. Weakness. By winter, Crestwood High felt like a different world for Isabella. The cold air bit at her cheeks each morning as she jogged down her block, earbuds pumping music into her ears, her lungs burning with effort, but in the best way. She no longer dreaded mornings. She looked forward to them. Every step she took outside reminded her she wasn't the same girl who once curled up in tears after gym class. She was stronger now, physically, yes, but more importantly, inside. When she caught her reflection in the mirror these days, she didn't see the whale Chloe had branded her as. She saw a girl who had endured storms and was still standing. She saw someone worthy of being seen. At school, the changes were impossible to ignore. Isabella now sat with a small but growing circle of friends, Emily, of course, but also Jordan, a shy boy from math class, and Sophia, an exchange student who admired Isabella's art. They weren't the popular crowd, but their laughter at lunch was genuine, and it filled Isabella with something she'd craved for years, belonging. Even teachers noticed the shift. Mrs. Bennett, her history teacher, pulled her aside one day. "You found your voice, Isabella. I'm proud of you. Don't lose it." Those words echoed inside her, fueling her more than she expected. But with Isabella's rise came Chloe's growing frustration. The queen bee of Crestwood High had built her power on fear and ridicule. If Isabella wasn't afraid anymore, what did that mean for her reign? "She's getting cocky," Chloe muttered to Liam one afternoon as they leaned against the lockers. "Walking around like she owns the place." Liam shrugged, tossing his basketball against the wall. "People still laugh when we make fun of her." "Not enough," Chloe snapped. "It's like she doesn't care anymore. That's worse than crying. Crying gave us power." She slammed her locker shut. For the first time in years, Chloe felt something foreign, something that twisted her stomach with unease. Insecurity. The real test came during the winter talent show. Students lined up to perform music, comedy, skits, and poetry. Isabella had been encouraged by Emily to enter, but she had hesitated until Evelyn urged her one evening at the kitchen table. "Your art touched people, didn't it?" Evelyn said, her hands wrapped around her tea mug. "Your words can do the same. Why hide the light you found? Let it shine, Isabella." So Isabella signed up. She chose to perform a spoken-word piece she had written late one night, raw and honest, about bullying, survival, and self-worth. On the night of the show, the auditorium buzzed with excitement. Chloe and Liam sat in the crowd, ready to jeer. When Isabella's name was called, she stepped onto the stage. The bright lights blinded her for a moment, her heart pounding. But then she took a deep breath, gripped the microphone, and began. "You called me a whale. You laughed when I cried. You made my silence your power, and my pain your entertainment. But I'm still here. Still standing. And every tear you caused has watered the roots of my strength." The room hushed. Her voice grew stronger with each line. "I am not your punchline. I am not your shadow. I am not the cruel names you gave me. I am Isabella Grant. And I will rise. Not for you. Not to prove you wrong. But to prove to myself that I was always more than enough." When she finished, the auditorium erupted in applause. Students stood, clapping and cheering. Even teachers wiped away tears. In the back row, Chloe's jaw tightened. Liam muttered, "This is ridiculous," but even he couldn't deny the energy in the room. For once, Isabella wasn't just surviving. She was commanding the stage. She was the one with the power. Afterward, students crowded around her. "That was amazing," Jordan said, beaming. "You killed it." "You're so brave," Sophia added. "Seriously, I wish I had half your confidence." Emily hugged her tightly. "I told you, Isa. You were born to shine." Isabella smiled, her cheeks warm with pride. For the first time in her life, she felt like she wasn't just enduring Crestwood High, she was transforming it. But Chloe wasn't about to let her throne slip away. That night, she sat in her room, seething. "She thinks she's some kind of hero now," Chloe spat into her phone as she ranted to Liam. "Everyone's acting like she's inspirational or something." Liam rolled his eyes. "So what? Let her have her moment. People will get over it." But Chloe wasn't satisfied. She had ruled Crestwood High for years. If Isabella's rise continued, Chloe knew her own crown was at risk. And Chloe Reed was not the kind of girl to let go of power quietly. The next morning, Isabella woke to dozens of texts, some from classmates she barely knew, all praising her performance. For the first time in her school life, her name was associated with admiration, not mockery. She opened her journal and wrote, "Last night, I stood on a stage and told the truth. And they listened. Not everyone, but enough. Chloe and Liam don't own me anymore. They never did. The truth is, I've always been stronger than they knew. And now they're finally seeing it too." She closed the journal with a smile. For years, she had prayed for the laughter to stop. Now, she didn't care if they laughed. Because she had found something stronger than their cruelty. Her voice. Crestwood High buzzed with excitement and gossip after the winter talent show. Isabella's performance was still the talk of the school. Her spoken word piece had been shared on social media, praised by classmates, teachers, and even alumni. For the first time in her life, she felt unstoppable. But Chloe Reed was furious. "She thinks she can take over the school," Chloe hissed to Liam as they leaned against their lockers. "Everyone's looking up to her now. This can't happen." Liam, less invested but still loyal to Chloe, shrugged. "She's just a phase. People will move on." Chloe's eyes blazed. "No. I'm not letting her walk around like she owns Crestwood. Not after everything. Not after what she did to me, no, to my power." Her fingers tightened into fists. She had tried everything before: ridicule, humiliation, public shaming. None of it had worked. Isabella had grown stronger with every attack, every insult, every attempt to break her. And now, Chloe had one plan left, a plan she thought would crush Isabella once and for all. The following week, Chloe and Liam decided to target Isabella during the biggest event of the semester, the winter dance. They spread rumors that Isabella was trying to make the night about herself, that she would embarrass anyone who tried to approach her. The goal was simple: isolate her completely. But something had changed. Isabella wasn't the same girl who hid in the back of the cafeteria. She was confident, she was strong, and most importantly, she had allies. Emily, Jordan, Sophia, and several others had already decided they wouldn't let Chloe manipulate the night. They promised to stick close to Isabella and support her publicly, no matter what Chloe and Liam tried. The night of the dance arrived, glittering lights and music filling the decorated gym. Isabella wore a simple but elegant dress, the kind Evelyn had picked out for her. She felt a flutter of nervousness, but it wasn't fear, it was excitement. She was ready. Chloe and Liam lurked nearby, whispering and smirking, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. At first, Chloe tried the usual insults. "Look at you, thinking anyone cares about you tonight," she sneered. "Poor little Isabella. Nobody's going to dance with you." But Isabella didn't flinch. She smiled politely. "I'm having fun regardless," she said calmly. Chloe's jaw tightened. This wasn't working. Minutes later, Chloe and Liam escalated. They orchestrated a plan to trip Isabella in the middle of the dance floor, hoping to make her fall in front of everyone. But Emily noticed and stepped in, pulling Isabella back just in time. Sophia grabbed Chloe's arm, spinning her around to prevent the move. Jordan called for a teacher. The plan failed spectacularly, and the whispers of mockery that Chloe had counted on turned into murmurs of disgust from other students. Chloe froze. For the first time, she realized that the school no longer feared her. Her power was slipping. And Liam's casual smirk had vanished too. He looked uncertain, unsure how to salvage the situation. Isabella, for the first time, fully understood the magnitude of her change. She stood tall on the dance floor, surrounded by her friends. She laughed freely, her joy infectious. Other students joined her, dancing alongside her, smiling and cheering. Chloe tried one last tactic. She threw a punchy insult, aiming to cut deep. You think you're better than everyone now? You're still nothing. Isabella met her gaze without hesitation. I'm not better than anyone, she said clearly. I just refuse to let cruelty define me. You should try it sometime. The words, calm and powerful, stunned Chloe. For the first time, she felt exposed. She had spent so long attacking Isabella to feel in control, but now the tables had turned. Isabella's strength made Chloe's cruelty look small, petty, and empty. The rest of the evening passed in an almost surreal contrast. Isabella and her friends laughed, danced, and celebrated. Chloe and Liam, meanwhile, slunk in the background, powerless to regain the influence they had lost. By the end of the night, Chloe and Liam realized something crucial. The more they tried to dominate Isabella, the more her light grew. Every attempt to humiliate her had backfired. Every insult had strengthened her. Chloe went home that night in silence, staring at her reflection. She had ruled the school for years, but now she understood, power built on fear was fragile. Real strength came from resilience, courage, and kindness, qualities Isabella had in abundance. The next morning, Isabella walked into school with her head high. She didn't need to flaunt her success, her presence was enough. Students greeted her warmly, some even cheering as she passed. Chloe hung back, staring, silent and small. Liam followed, still unsure how to navigate the new hierarchy. For Isabella, it wasn't about revenge or proving them wrong. It was about standing tall, owning her worth, and living without fear. She stopped by her locker and found a small note tucked inside. Emily had written, "You inspire me every day. Thank you for being you." Isabella smiled, clutching the note to her chest. The fear, the shame, and the cruelty she had endured had transformed into strength, compassion, and pride. That night, she wrote in her journal, "They tried to break me. They tried every trick, every insult, every scheme. But none of it worked. I'm not afraid of them anymore. I'm free. And freedom feels incredible." She closed the journal and looked at her reflection in the mirror. Gone was the girl who hid from the world. In her place stood a young woman who had survived, grown, and begun to shine. Chloe and Liam had underestimated her. And in doing so, they had taught her the greatest lesson of all: strength isn't about what others think of you, it's about what you believe about yourself. The weeks after the winter dance were a whirlwind. Isabella woke each day with a quiet confidence that hadn't existed a year before. The whispers, the laughter, and the cruel jokes still lingered in some corners of Crestwood High, but they no longer held power over her. She had found a voice, a community of friends, and, most importantly, her own inner strength. Every morning, she jogged through the neighborhood, music in her ears, heart light, lungs burning with the exhilaration of freedom. Each step reminded her how far she had come, from a frightened, isolated girl to someone who refused to be defined by the cruelty of others. At school, the shift was palpable. Isabella's presence drew attention, not for ridicule, but for admiration. Students whispered her name in hallways, but now with respect. Teachers sought her opinion. And for the first time, Chloe Reed and Liam Carter no longer had the spotlight. Chloe, especially, was growing frantic. Her careful reign of fear had unraveled, and her usual tactics, mockery, scheming, public humiliation, were powerless against a girl who refused to be broken. One afternoon, Chloe cornered Isabella in the hallway, her voice low and venomous. "You think you've won, huh?" she hissed. "Everyone's staring at you like you're some kind of hero. You think this changes anything?" Isabella met her gaze steadily, her heart calm. "No," she said, her voice unwavering. "It doesn't change you. It changes me. And it's not about winning or losing. It's about standing tall, even when people try to knock you down." Chloe's eyes widened in disbelief. For years, she had been able to rattle anyone with a glance, a word, a gesture. But Isabella was immune. The fear and shame Chloe thrived on no longer existed. Liam lingered nearby, uncomfortable. He realized something he had never considered before: cruelty didn't make Isabella small. It had only made her stronger. The school year progressed, culminating in the final project for their English class. Students were asked to present a personal story that had shaped them, something that demonstrated growth or change. Isabella's mind raced, not with fear, but with opportunity. She thought of everything she had endured: the cafeteria ridicule, the journal humiliation, the whale costume at the pep rally. She thought of Evelyn's guidance, Emily's kindness, and the friends she had made along the way. She realized that every painful moment had shaped her into someone who could now stand proud, unafraid. When it was her turn to present, the room fell silent. Isabella stepped forward and began. "I want to tell a story," she said, her voice clear and calm. "A story about fear, humiliation, and pain, but also about resilience. About finding courage when you think you have none. About understanding that strength doesn't come from others, it comes from within." She recounted her experiences, not to shame anyone, but to show the reality of bullying and the power of perseverance. She spoke honestly, her words carrying the weight of someone who had survived and grown stronger because of it. By the time she finished, the classroom erupted in applause. Even Chloe and Liam, seated silently, could not hide their discomfort. For the first time, they saw Isabella not as a target, but as someone who had risen above them completely. The teacher, Mr. Hall, nodded with approval. "Isabella, that was courageous and powerful. Thank you for sharing your story. I hope everyone here takes a lesson from your words." The applause continued, and Isabella felt a sense of pride unlike anything she had ever known. She had transformed the power dynamic, not through retaliation, but through resilience and authenticity. That evening, Isabella walked home, her journal clutched in her hands. She reflected on the journey, the pain, the fear, the isolation, and the growth. Every page of her journal now felt like a testament to her perseverance. At home, Evelyn greeted her with a warm hug. "I heard about your presentation today. I'm so proud of you," she said. "You've become someone remarkable, Isabella. Never forget that." Isabella smiled, feeling the warmth of validation and love. "Thank you, Grandma. I finally feel free." The following week, Chloe and Liam began to face consequences in subtle but undeniable ways. Chloe's attempts to manipulate her classmates no longer worked. Students avoided her, and whispers of criticism followed her like a shadow. She realized, bitterly, that the cruelty she had relied on for so long could no longer control anyone. Liam, meanwhile, found himself increasingly isolated. He had once been Chloe's right-hand enforcer, but now students quietly distanced themselves from him, unwilling to participate in his schemes. The sense of power he had enjoyed for years was gone. Isabella observed this quietly, not with joy or vengeance, but with the calm understanding that life often balances itself. Those who inflict harm eventually confront the consequences of their actions. One day, as Isabella sat in the courtyard with Emily and Sophia, Chloe approached her cautiously. Her voice was low, almost pleading. "I'm sorry," Chloe said, her eyes avoiding direct contact. "I didn't realize how much I hurt you. I just wanted people to follow me, to respect me." Isabella regarded her silently for a moment, her journal resting on her lap. She could feel the sincerity, or at least the vulnerability, in Chloe's words. "I've moved past the hurt," Isabella said finally. "You have a choice now: continue being cruel and isolated, or change. That's the lesson you need to learn." Chloe nodded slowly, the weight of her actions settling over her. It was a start, a first step toward realizing the impact of her behavior. That night, Isabella wrote in her journal, "They tried to break me, to humiliate me, to make me small. And yet here I am, standing taller than ever. They are learning the consequences of their actions. And I am learning the power of resilience, courage, and kindness. This isn't just my victory, it's a lesson for anyone who ever tried to bring me down. Strength isn't revenge. Strength is surviving and rising above." She closed her journal, her heart full. For the first time in her life, Isabella felt truly proud, not of defeating others, but of becoming her truest self. The days following Isabella's English presentation felt different at Crestwood High. The once unshakable reign of Chloe Reed and Liam Carter had crumbled. Students whispered in hallways, not with fear, but with quiet admiration for Isabella. Her courage had become a beacon, and it was impossible to ignore. Chloe and Liam were no longer untouchable. Their jokes fell flat, their whispers were ignored, and their attempts to intimidate anyone were met with laughter, eye rolls, or silence. For the first time, they understood the consequences of their cruelty. Respect built on fear was fragile, and when it collapsed, so did the illusion of power. Chloe, sitting alone one afternoon in the empty library, felt the weight of her actions. She remembered every insult, every plan to humiliate Isabella, every time she had mocked or excluded others to feel superior. And now, she was alone. She wasn't met with hatred, at least not openly, but the isolation was worse. Students she had once controlled avoided her, and teachers seemed distant. Even Liam, her longtime accomplice, had grown quiet, unsure how to regain influence he had once wielded effortlessly. Chloe realized bitterly that the power she had chased for years was meaningless if it caused pain instead of respect. Liam fared no better. His casual smirk had faded, replaced by an unease he didn't know how to shake. He had spent so long following Chloe, reinforcing her cruelty, that he hadn't considered the moral cost of his actions. Now he watched Isabella and her friends, laughing, supporting each other, living without fear, and felt a pang of regret. It was not a dramatic, explosive punishment, but a quiet reckoning. The world they had tried to control had shifted under their feet, and they were left confronting the emptiness of their choices. Isabella, on the other hand, moved through the halls with a sense of calm triumph. She didn't gloat, she didn't seek revenge. Her victory wasn't about making Chloe or Liam suffer, it was about living fully, freely, and authentically. Emily, Jordan, and Sophia walked with her, their laughter filling the hallways with joy rather than fear. Students who had once stood on the sidelines now cheered for her small victories, her artwork displayed in the hall, her speeches in class, and her consistent resilience against bullying. It was proof that courage and perseverance could create change, not through cruelty, but through integrity. One afternoon, Chloe approached Isabella again, this time in a quiet corner of the schoolyard. Her voice was low, almost apologetic. "I'm sorry," Chloe said, avoiding direct eye contact. "I thought being cruel made me powerful. I see now that I was wrong. I hurt you, and I hurt myself too. I don't know how to fix it." Isabella regarded her calmly, her journal resting on her lap. She didn't smile, but there was no anger in her eyes. "You can't undo the past," she said softly. "But you can choose not to hurt anyone else. You can learn from this. That's the only way forward." Chloe nodded slowly, a mix of relief and shame crossing her features. For the first time, she understood that true strength was not in controlling others, it was in understanding your own mistakes and striving to be better. Liam lingered behind Chloe, hesitant. "I'm sorry too," he said quietly. "I followed her lead instead of thinking for myself. I see now how wrong that was." Isabella nodded. "Acknowledging it is the first step," she said. "Now the question is, what will you do differently?" The moral was clear. Chloe and Liam had a choice. They could continue down the path of cruelty, or they could change. Facing the consequences of their actions didn't mean punishment, it meant reflection, growth, and responsibility. Isabella returned to her friends, feeling a profound sense of closure. The pain she had endured, the isolation, the ridicule, they had all been transformed into something powerful: courage, confidence, and the ability to inspire others. She realized that the bullying, as cruel as it had been, had forged her into someone stronger, someone who could rise above adversity and still remain kind. That evening, she wrote the final entry in her journal for the school year. I was called names, humiliated, and made to feel small. But I survived. I grew. I discovered the strength I didn't know I had. The world tried to break me, but I chose to rise. Those who hurt me are learning the consequences of their actions. And I have learned the most important lesson of all: power isn't taken through fear or cruelty. Power comes from courage, resilience, and being true to yourself. I am proud of who I am, and I always will be. She closed the journal, the weight of the past replaced with a lightness of heart. The tears she had shed were no longer for pain, they were for growth, for triumph, and for the clarity that comes when you rise above what was meant to destroy you. The next day, Chloe and Liam walked through the halls with quiet awareness. Their peers no longer feared them, they respected Isabella instead. And though Chloe and Liam still had much to learn, they now understood a lesson they could never forget: cruelty may seem powerful, but it ultimately leaves the one who wields it weaker, and the one who rises above it stronger. Isabella walked past them with her head held high, the friend she had fought for by her side. No sneers, no whispers, no schemes could touch her. She had survived. She had grown. She had won, not through revenge, but through courage. The bullies had learned their lesson. And Isabella had learned hers: strength isn't about defeating others. It's about surviving, rising, and living with integrity. She smiled as she looked toward the future. It was bright, full of possibility, and entirely her own. Thank you for watching. Timeless Stories loves you.